Hi guys. Um, Thought I'd get on here and share another one of my zany ideas. Anyways, I was thinking about. I was talking about this in a previous live stream. That one of the ways that I like to look at the world and human beings and society and all, I guess, human activity is to look at it as an alien anthropologist would. So in one of my courses that I had taken a couple of years ago, my teacher used this this thought experiment, right? And he referred to the concept of an alien anthropologist. And sorry, I'm getting messages, so I'm just tracking all that stuff. And an alien anthropologist would view humanity through almost an absurdist lens, no familiarity. And that lack of familiarity, that perception without judgment, is a kind of perfect objectivity. And it's something that humans are not able to easily do with reference to themselves. We have conditioned, we have, we're too familiar with ourselves to truly see ourselves in a sense. And so, uh, the idea of an alien anthropologist forces you to consider things in the most human beings and human activity and human society in the most uh, objective light. And that is, I think, very important for understanding the world and understanding human behavior. If, if, if one is aimed, I guess, at developing an objective model of reality, then uh, it's necessary to use to try to adopt the perspective of an alien anthropologist. Um, Now, I took the position of an alien anthropologist conceptually when thinking about homosexuality and what drives, what makes individuals, some humans, uh, homosexual, others heterosexual. What defines what neuroscience factors, what neuropsychological factors, what you know, uh, neurobiological factors give rise to how does the brain link to the behavior with respect to the behavior of homosexuality, with respect to sexual behavior, and why do they deviate from sexual norms and reproductive norms, and what is the neurobiological reason for that is something that I have thought about in the past, and one of the perhaps one of the reasons there are many utilitarian anthropological reasons provided for homosexuality um, and many um, neuroscience explanations provided such that, well, there are essentially attempts to differentiate homosexual brains from heterosexual brains and try to find structural differences with respect to homosexual brains. And some have been found. From what I understand, there are it has something to do with from my friend's a major in psychology, and so we've discussed this. Something to do with estroidial cells in the amygdala. They're associated with estrogen, I think, or they're. Uh, it isn't that homosexual brains have different. They're not anatomically different, but there are receptor differences in terms of how the receptors are distributed and how they function with respect to estrogenic receptors in these astroidial cells in the hippocampus, I believe, or in the amygdala. In any case, this is a kind of neuroanatomical, neurochemical explanation for homosexual behavior. Um, Other explanations view homosexuality as essentially this is more of a utilitarian anthropological perspective that homosexuals rise, are one of the things associated with a person becoming a homosexual or an individual a developing homosexuality rather than heterosexuality is um, the level of stress hormone they were exposed to, level of cortisols that the fetus was exposed to during the mother's pregnancy. Um, So the idea is that mothers who are stressed, that is an indicator, right? That is a biological imprint being left by social conditions that are chaotic. And so in times of social distress, deprivation, poverty, starvation, or other kinds of, environmental or social chaos, women are placed under stress during pregnancy. That stress produces, um, for whatever reason, that has some link to the development of homosexuality. Um, so it's not necessarily a nature thing. It could also be very much a nurture thing, or it is probably has more to do with fetal development in womb, in vitro, um, rather than genetics. Rather than genetics in a pure sense, right? Um, it's harder to say that there's a homosexual gene. It's that during fetal development, certain processes occur that cause the brain and the neurotransmitter receptors and the hormonal receptors to develop specific ways. Anthropologically, this has been explained as mothers giving rise to uh, homosexual offspring. The idea is that um, the in moments of biological, environmental, social distress. Um, so I need to go through. It's going to take me a couple of minutes, I think, to go through the mechanics of the explanation. But it's something to the effect of it isn't biologically beneficial for the species at those moments to have too many competitors in the gene pool, um, and and so they ultimately develop homosexuality because this is more of a teleological explanation for homosexuality. That in moments of social distress, it's less beneficial to have competitive maters and more, uh, which is more the homosexual or more the heterosexual trend, driving males to compete with each other and females to compete with each other. It's actually better, right? Because that's a part of reproduction, the competition between males for females and the competition between females for males. So the logic of the mechanics of the explanation, the logic of the explanation ultimately plays out as during those times, it's not beneficial for individuals to be competitive with each other, right? Because then, even in reproductive matters, because in moments of distress, it's cooperation that matters, not competitiveness. In moments of social distress, we need cooperative individuals, not competitive individuals. And in this sense, homosexuality is it's viewed as a way of making individuals, again, this is very much a teleology, making individuals less competitive, more cooperative, right? Um, so as to preserve the stability of the species, of the gene pool, and of our biological existence. And so hopefully I've explained that correctly. Um, Right. Because if you think about it, heterosexual men compete with each other. They're in a competitive dynamic with each other to get females. Heterosexual females are in a competitive dynamic with each other to get males. In the same sense, you could have competition between homosexual females for other females and competition between homosexual males for other males. But I mean, maybe it's less likely. I don't have enough knowledge in the area to go in depth too much, but somehow all of those things link together as I've described it, right? So it's the need in moments of social distress to have cooperative individuals rather than those that are even so in the sense that heterosexuality is linked to reproductive competitivity between males for females and females for males. In moments of social distress, it's better to have cooperative individuals who are not competing, men who are not competing with other men, right? And women who are not competing with other women. Rather, cooperative individuals who are allying with both to produce a net social benefit. And so that's kind of the logic that has been explained to me. I think that's a very interesting teleology. It's a teleological explanation for homosexuality in a purposive sense. Whether things actually play out according to the logic of a teleology is up for debate, and we can have an intelligent discussion about that. But regardless, that's the logic that has been put forward for uh, what I describe as, in any case, this is a that's all secondary. But um, Now, what I view now, that's a teleology for homosexuality. I really don't think it's necessarily very. I mean, so why would I? Okay, so why would I be opposed to a teleology like that? I think the reason I think that you know how does you know how our biology, right? So we, consciousness is an emergent property of our biology, right? So our biology, our cells are independently acting. They are not conscious and of themselves, and so women reacting psychologically to social distress, social disorder, right? Stress hormones are then impacting the fetus. Why does the fetus then know to develop? How do these systems communicate with each other, right? So that there's a feedback loop between social distress, cortisol, homosexuality. I mean, do you see all the links that are a part of this explanation? All the links in the chain. Social distress leads to greater cortisol levels for the fetus. Somehow the fetus knows then to respond to the cortisol by developing this particular sexual proclivity. And then that sexual proclivity somehow then knows to be cooperative rather than competitive. I don't really. Why does this have to manifest? Why does the need for cooperative individuals need to manifest in a sexuality preference? Why couldn't the individual simply become more agreeable? So why couldn't the cortisol levels as the result of the social distress, right? Affecting the female, affecting the fetus. Why doesn't that just make the individual more agreeable and cooperative rather than making them homosexual and somehow that links to them being more cooperative? I don't know. But regardless, um, that's the problem with any kind of teleology that has too many links in the chain, and it's ultimately the logic of the explanation, as I'm presenting it, might actually my presentation may be off, the logic may be fine, but regardless, in any case, I don't really view homosexuality as a in any kind of teleological sense that it serves some sort of larger. I'm distrustful of teleologies in general, and with regard to homosexuality, I think a lot of it may have to do with, we may be able to define personality with reference to neurotransmitter uh, characteristics. So, individuals may be defined by different types of neurotransmitter affinities, right? So instead of, defining personality with regard to, you know, um, motivation like Enneagram or cognition, cognitive typology like MBTI, we could define it with relation to neurotransmitters, right? So this is more of a neurobiological explanation for personality. So you'd identify my primary neurotransmitter is dopamine, so I am a dopamine personality. My primary neurotransmitter is serotonin, so I'm a serotonin personality. My primary neurotransmitter is testosterone. I'm a testosterone personality. I think they've already tried to do this. I think Ellen is some. There is. I'm not. I'm. That's not original. That's something that I'm co-opting from something I read in the past, or at least something vaguely similar. So this is the idea that's been put forward, at least in the past, identifying with some sort of neurotransmitter affinity. I think that's a pretty good way of looking at personality, because I do tend to like, you know, when things have been reduced to, the physical sciences, explanations grounded in the physical sciences, which are more certain than other types of explanations. In any case, my view of homosexuality is that it may have something to do with novelty seeking. So instead of it being a teleology, it's homosexuality. Individuals who ultimately develop that sexuality may be extremely that their cognition may be associated somehow with dopamine, and to the extent that that's a logical way of looking at cognition in relation to neurotransmitters. And a big part of dopamine is novelty seeking, right? So it's seeking out new experiences, seeking out new ideas, seeking out new events, seeking out, I guess, the chaos of the new. Novelty seeking, which is a byproduct of some sort of dopamine affinity. It's associated with dopamine, which is associated with motivation, motor skills, and a number of other extremely important cognition elements of cognition. So, in my view, homosexuality is a kind of novelty seeking in the sense that individuals who become homosexual, develop that sexuality, may have just simply an intense. So, you think about it this way: heterosexuality is not novel, right? I mean, it's the conventional mode of it's the conventional sexuality, right, for humans. I mean, we're primarily heterosexual, and so There's nothing novel about that. But for individuals who are very, 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 very novelty seeking, which there are individuals who do seem to have the, experience, sensation seeking kind of characteristics, the need for new ideas, the need for new experiences, you can see how homosexual forms of sexual acts and sexual interaction are inherently more novel. Those types of sexual experiences are inherently more novel because they occur with a member of the same sex rather than they occur with a member of the same sex rather than a member of the opposite sex. And there may be something inherently more novel about that for homosexuals, right? Um, Neurochemically, there may be some association with dopamine there that, these individuals simply have that strong, drive toward novelty, and that manifests in their choice of, uh, their ultimate manifestation of homosexuality, which in this view of homosexuality, it's not a gene, and it's not even necessarily a part of fetal development. It's an element of your personality, your novelty-seeking behaviors. And so then maybe what we'd be able to do is we'd be able to look, study, and look at homosexual individuals, and then run tests for their level of novelty seeking. And if we find that those two correlate, that homosexuality correlates with high levels of novelty seeking, that may prove me correct. But I don't know. I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on that. So yes, my explanation for homosexuality is not that it's a teleology in any sense. It's not a teleological explanation or a purposive explanation or an anthropological explanation. It's simply it's simply to state that homosexuality may be the result of individuals manifesting and developing intense needs for novelty seeking and intense novelty seeking behaviors. And obviously, mating and engaging in sexual interaction with a person of the same sex, because heterosexuality is the norm and it is not novel, that becomes an inherently novel act to sexually interact with a member of the same sex rather than the opposite sex. Hence, in that sense, right, homosexual sexual interaction may be an attempt for the two individuals to essentially co-opt each other in a process of seeking novelty in their sexual interactions. And if they're inherently a novelty-seeking individual, maybe I'm not explaining that clearly. Maybe I should slow down. So, or maybe I should be a bit more simplistic with the way that I compress this down into words. But regardless, you can see how, basically all I'm saying, homosexuality may simply be a manifestation of an individual's, um, you know, proclivity and the intensity of their need for novelty seeking in their experiences and in their mental life. And in this sense, their novelty seeking will affect their inherently novelty seeking personality, may affect their sexuality. So there may be some link between personality and sexuality there, where then they develop. So in that sense, sexuality may be a developed thing rather than an innate thing, right? Um, just because it isn't environmental and just because it isn't genetic doesn't mean that well, in that sense, it would be genetic, right? So I guess I am saying that it's genetic, but not via the same. I'm arriving at the same conclusion via an untraditional so line of reasoning. So you can see I'm basically saying that homosexuality, the reason for it is associated. It's essentially should be viewed as novelty seeking, right? A novelty seeking behavior in individuals developed for other reasons. In this sense, if they have a novelty seeking personality, they will seek out novel sexual interaction. And a proclivity for novelty seeking in an individual's personality then extends to them seeking novelty in their sexual interaction, then extends to the full development of a sexuality um, based on sexual interaction with counterparts, right, that are of the same sex, because those sexual interactions are inherently more novel than sexual interactions with the opposite sex, because heterosexuality is the norm and homosexuality is novel. And so, in this sense, there's probably some relation between personality and sexuality, between the need for novelty and the development of the sexuality ultimately and the individual's identity. And so, what stems from personality then affects sexuality then becomes an integrated identity, and then the individual begins to identify as homosexual, right? But the fundamental impulse that underlies all homosexuality, I'm saying, may be that same novelty-seeking impulse that causes us to pursue any unique, novel, uh, you know, experience. The impulse to seek novelty is all I'm saying is that the impulse to seek novelty is the basis of homosexuality in that sense, and the development of the sexuality. And so, I don't know if this is really a. Hopefully, I think I've explained that clearly enough now. But regardless, um, so yeah, I think this is at least a, if not an interesting way of looking at it, an original way of looking at it. And yeah, so uh, the way that you test my theory, like I said, is to just take individuals that identify as homosexual and measure with other tests their proclivity for novelty seeking. Um, and if those two map over, if homosexuality and novelty seeking correlate, uh, then that may offer some sort of proof for my theory about homosexuality. Thank you for watching.